Hey, what's up guys, TechTitan here and I'm back again with a brand new video. So before I begin, as always, I want to thank you all so much for watching this one. If you enjoy my videos, make sure you leave a thumbs up. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. So with that being said, today we're going to be doing the comparison between the 2023 Moto Razr versus the 2024 Moto Razr. Now, I know I'm a little bit late to this kind of comparison, but I still want to share my thoughts and hopefully give you guys a better understanding of how both of these phones are different. So let's go ahead and begin in talking about the design, and we're going to start with the 2023 Moto Razr. So the 23 model basically had it actually introduced us to a budget flip device, which was honestly mind-blowing at the time because it did cost around $649, which if you think about it, I know it's a little bit high, but a lot of these flip devices started at $1,000 and then they went up in price. And if we look at it from a design perspective, it did not really skimp out on the material of choice. So it's using the vegan leather material, which I know some people may call fake plastic. I guess it can be fake plastic, but basically it does mimic leather as much as it can. Now in the 2024 model, they stepped up the design perspective. They actually gave us what a lot of people have been asking for, but still kept the same price. So the 24 model, while still using similar material, it is a little bit more smooth, which we will see when they put them side by side, but it also gave us a larger display on the back of the phone versus the smaller 1.5-inch screen that you'll find on the 23 model. Now, if we put both of these phones kind of side by side, one of the first things that you'll notice, or I guess you will not notice, but basically the feel of both of these phones, the 24 model is a little bit more slippery than the 23 model because it does have this kind of really soft touch versus a still softer touch, but a little bit rougher on the edges, so it provided a better grip. So in that regard, the 23 model still had, in my opinion, a slightly better look and a better feel as far as how both of these phones go. Now, the useful thing is in the 2024 model, we actually got a legit display. So a display that you can actually use. So the secondary display is a 3.6 inches versus the 1.6 inches from the 23 model, which was, again, a fantastic look, and you can do much more on the 24 model versus the 23 model. So you can open up your camera, send messages, look at your pictures, and go through your email, things like that. The 23 model was really limited to the things that you could do with it. Now, as far as actual screen quality goes, there is also improvements in the 24 model versus the 23 model, but they both have a 6.9-inch display, 2640 by 1080p, and they both are plenty bright for a lot of people. But if we look at the 23 model a little bit on the spec sheet, you'd see that the 23 model had a Super AMOLED display. It does have, well, actually it's a LTPO AMOLED display. It does have 144 Hz refresh rate, HDR10 plus, and a peak brightness of 1400 nits when you need it. It does also have 85.1 screen to body ratio, which meant that it is definitely a fantastic display. And everything from watching videos to browsing the web was really good on this phone. And even like the crease, while it's still there, I mean, after a certain amount of time, you'll kind of dismiss it. It's not really that prominent. So it wasn't really that big of a deal in my opinion. Now, if we look at the 24 model, here's the improvements that they made, right? So it still is a 6.9-inch display, 2640 by 1080p, still the same LTPO AMOLED. However, they did downsize the refresh rate from 144 Hz to 120 Hz, which I'm really fine with it. It doesn't really bother me that much. It still uses HDR10 plus. However, the peak brightness went from crazy 1600 nits to up to 3000 nits of actual peak brightness, which means essentially they sacrificed a little bit of that kind of refresh rate to give you a higher peak brightness, which I'm all for, honestly. The 120 Hz and 144 Hz comparison is really slim. It's really hard to actually tell them apart. But basically, that's the improvement that they made from a 23 model to the 24 model. In addition to just giving us a slightly brighter display, the actual front of the phone, or let's say the back of the phone. So a bigger display on the back and a much brighter display in the front. So I'll take those improvements any time of the day. Okay, so now let's actually talk about the camera comparison. So the 23 model versus the 24 model as far as the camera quality goes, let's talk a little bit about it. Let's break it down. So on paper, you might think to yourself that the 23 model is better because it does have a 64 megapixel main sensor. It does shoot video up to 4K. it does have a optical image stabilization standard, and it does have a 13 megapixel ultra wide sensor as far as your secondary sensor. Now, as far as image quality goes, it's a flip device. It's not going to impress you. However, it did hold its own. It gave me like decent pictures. It wasn't like crazy great pictures, but they were pictures that will do the job. Camera is not your priority when it comes to both of these devices in general. Now, the 24 model, it did give us lower resolution from 64 to 50 megapixels, but it did translate to a better quality camera. So you still get optical image stabilization, you still get 4K video, you also have electronic image stabilization for your video, and you get a 13 megapixel ultra wide. And the pictures in general on the 24 model looked better. There is definitely a drastic improvement from the previous generation. So the previous generation gave us a lot of over sharpening, and the color was not the most accurate thing in the world, and it was good, but this one is better. So the 24 model definitely gives us a much improved camera. So from a strictly camera perspective, if you're looking at both of these phones, the 24 model has the upper hand versus the 23 model. I have full camera comparisons on both of these phones linked in the description below, so check them out if you guys want more info on that. Now, as far as the performance go, the 23 model did have the following specs. So you get the Qualcomm Snapdragon 7 Gen 1 processor. It's an octa-core processor, 128GB of base storage, 8GB of RAM, and you also have 5000 milliamp hour battery, 30 watt of fast charging, and 5 watts of wireless charging. In comparison, the 24 model did have the following specs. So this time around, they went with a MediaTek Dimensity 7300X based on a 4nm architecture, octa-core processor. It uses the Mali G615 MC2 for your GPU. Now, they upped the storage from 128 to 256 standard storage, 8GB of RAM, a 30 watt of, again, fast charging, but it did also improve the wireless charging from 5 watts to 15 watts. So on paper, the 24 model performs better. As far as your synthetic benchmark scores, you get 1007 and 2725 on the 23 model, which translated to good performance. So I didn't really have any issue on both of these phones as far as performance. The 23 model I did notice it heating up way more than I would like it to, versus the 24 model. Now, if we look at the 24 model now, you'll see that there is improvements as far as your synthetic benchmark score. So you get a 1044 on your single core and 3041 on the multi-core. So the performance, I will give it to the 24 model just because I didn't notice as much of heating issues as I did on the 23 model. There's going to be a lot of videos I will link in the description below that will give you guys more information on these phones separately, just for the sake of comparison and keeping this as time efficient as possible. That's all I'm going to say as far as performance. Now, which one would I personally pick? Honestly, as far as just looks and the better display and the slightly better performance, the faster wireless charging, you can think to yourself and going with the 24 model, especially since the 23 model is now around $350. The 24 model is, I think, $100 or $150 more. So both of these phones are still good value if you're in the market for flip devices. I do have to raise the question of the durability. So in my opinion, the hinge on the 23 model is much more solid than the 24 model. So when I actually tested it out, at first I was thinking to myself, it might be just my unit. I tried it with a different unit. The 24 model, when I kind of tried to hardly flip the phone, it did go down and did actually flip, versus the 24 model, which I struck it in the same manner and is the same strength, but it did nothing. So the hinge is definitely stronger on the 23 model versus the 24 model, which in the longevity, that might make a difference. But as of right now, I didn't have any issues with the 24 model, so keep that in mind. So with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will definitely catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.